This program is developed by CIRM Academy. CIRM Academy is the developer of Certified Enterprise Risk Management certificates. We have CIRM for electric reliability, CIRM for aerospace, and CIRM for cyber currently. It's the developer of value-added auditing, and it's a publisher of CIRM Risk Insights. If you go to http://insights.cirmacademy.com, you will find articles on a variety of subjects, at least one of which should be interesting to you. I think my background's been pretty well covered. I have spent the last 20 years in search of security that makes people's lives more convenient as opposed to more inconvenient, and security that people will use as opposed to circumvent, and have built many of the first in different product categories such as wireless LANs, firewall appliances, email marketing systems, and a precursor to PayPal, the first managed security service, and the first virtualized automated test environment for application stacks. We're going to go through really flyover managing risk and data supply chains. And I'm going to start with the context and define information and communication technology supply chain risk management, abbreviated ICT, SCRM. This is very critical to national security, and that's where we're going to start, and then we will drill down to specific supply chain and NIST standards that relate to supply chain management and information security. So I'll give you some examples of some complex global supply chains. We're going to discuss supply chain management in the NIST SIP, cybersecurity framework, National Institute Standards and Technology, SP 800-161, Supply Chain Risk Management Practices for Federal Information Systems and Organizations, is a very relevant and useful reference document. We'll talk about that. We're going to talk a little bit about how operational and financial management and regulations are in particular the Committee of Sponsoring Organization of the Treadway Commission's Internal Control Integrated Framework called the COSO Framework Requirements and the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, Section 404. And then we're going to talk a little bit about where you start, and a good place is within this cybersecurity framework tool, which I'll give you an example of drilling down on, so it won't, it's a lot less scary than it sounds. And then we'll go to questions, and I do have a few comments on the references. I'm going to describe the context for and define information and communication technology supply chain risk management. Thing that you need to understand about supply chain risk management is the Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, just brought some two Americans back from North, by the way, has declared cyber the #1 global threat. And this is a statement for the record that he did for the Worldwide Threat Assessment of the U.S. Intelligence Community for the Senate Armed Services Committee. So a lot out of all the threats out there that they consider cyber #1. Introduction to the D&I statement states, quick and radical changes in the world and our threat environment demands reevaluations of the way we do business, expanding our analytic envelope, altering the vocabulary of intelligence. Threats are more diverse, interconnected, and viral than at any time in history. And this increases the complexity of doing supply chain management more than you can possibly imagine, or perhaps you can. The statement continues to say that attacks which can be cyber and financial weapons can be deniable and unattributable, and I added, and undiscovered. Destruction can be invisible, latent, and progressive. Shifts in human geography, climate, disease, competition for natural resources fuel tensions and conflicts. Seemingly irrelevant local events, which you can also call tipping points, are more likely to affect U.S. national security in accelerated time frames. Now, the D&I report was actually 29 pages long. It listed 8 other major threat areas: terrorism and transnational organized crime, weapons of mass destruction, proliferation, counterintelligence, threats to U.S. government supply chains, counterspace, which is issues having to do with all of our satellites and other space, natural resources, insecurity and competition, health and pandemic threats, and mass atrocities. And it contained 15 pages on regional threats. So now we'll go to an example. So looking at the last line of the last slide, seemingly irrelevant local events are more likely to affect U.S. national security in accelerated time frames. The Ebola outbreak in West Africa affected supply chains of the World Health Organization, Nestle, and many other organizations, companies, and countries. In fact, it altered airline routes, affected how the TSA and immigration deal with international travelers in our airports, and there were far-reaching effects in other parts of the world as well. Medical and pharmaceutical supply chain was already inadequate in West Africa. WHO, World Health Organization, has had trouble delivering supplies to affected areas. There's a breakdown of already inadequate infrastructure and services due to the outbreak, makes tracking of the spread of infection inaccurate. So you hear counts of anything from 2,000 to 8,000 to 10,000 people affected, and nobody really knows because the infrastructure and the tracking is not available in these countries to understand that. Now, one of the things that I thought was really interesting to all of you chocoholics is that West Africa produces 70% of the world's cocoa beans. Reduced cocoa output from West Africa has caused a wholesale prices to skyrocket. Nestle has to choose whether to dip into its cocoa reserves or pay higher prices. And this is a typical supply chain question. This has also become an opportunity for South America to become